Hey, good morning and welcome. Today I'm going to be replacing the upper deck on my Traxxas Rustler, and while I'm in there I'm going to be replacing the Bellcrank with the GPM Racing Products Aluminum Bellcrank. I picked this up a long time ago. I've just been when it was on sale. It's been sitting waiting for an opportunity. While I'm in there, this would be a good time. This comes with bearing. First off, to get started, you're going to want to remove the steering linkage. I'm going to be starting off removing the tie rods from the steering knuckles. On both sides, left and right. And right here, I'll be also removing the linkage that goes from the servo to the Bellcrank. Right now, since I'm not replacing the servo, and I don't want to have to recenter it, I'm not going to disconnect the servo saver. I'm just going to disconnect the linkage at the Bellcrank. Single screw here. Next, we've got to remove the upper deck. The servo is going to come with that, along with the Bellcrank. Is all attached to that, because you've got the servo mount and the posts for the Bellcrank all attached to the bottom of that upper chassis plate. You can see where my upper deck has cracked here, right at the back corner, from some chassis flex at the skate park. It's a little bit of abuse. There's just the 2 screws in the back corner and 2 screws up near the front. And lift up. You should be able to slide it all out, and you can see your Bellcrank and your servo right there. Here's my new upper deck. Alright, I've got the Bellcrank laid out here, the new one and the new chassis plate. I'm going to go ahead and start to assemble these. First, I want to take the old Bellcrank assembly off because I'm going to need to remove the tie rods. Save these screws because these are what you're going to put the new one together with. Once those screws are removed, the whole Bellcrank should lift right off of the chassis plate. Okay, now I'm going to assemble the Bellcrank just like the old one. I'm going to lay out your pieces. Make sure the bearings are still pressed inside there. Don't lose those. Now you've got 2 screws that came with the kit. Use those screws. You're probably going to want to use a drop of thread lock as these are going into the metal screws into the aluminum Bellcrank. And then you're going to take and transfer your tie rods over. Again, since we're going to use a metal screw into the aluminum, this time you're going to want to change, to use a little thread lock on those screws. Okay, and the bell crank is now assembled. Bring your new chassis plate over. You got these bushings here. Over the pins. And then you turn your bell crank over, put it over the posts. And replace the screws. And this time you want to verify that everything still moves freely. And now it's time to change out the servo to the new upper deck. Again, there's just 4 screws on the mounting ears of the servo. Remove those and transfer it over to the new upper chassis. Once the servo is firmly attached to the mount on the upper chassis, now you can go ahead and put the linkage from the servo back to the bell crank. Again, you're going to want to use a little bit of thread lock, metal screw into a metal part. This is where it could be tricky. When you go to put this back in, there are 2 little dimples in the lower chassis plate here, and that is where these cap screws that hold the bell crank on go in, and that gives some rigidity to those posts so that those don't break. You want to make sure those go into those little pockets there. That'll make sure that you get a nice, it'll seat properly, and you don't have any binding. You've got 2 screws up front to replace, and then your 2 screws at the back of the upper deck. Finally, we're going to need to reinstall your steering linkage into your steering knuckles. And there you have it. I've got rid of this sloppy plastic bell crank. I'm going to save this as a spare unit. And I've replaced my broken upper chassis. Now, as a bonus, right here, I'm not going to throw this away. I've got a use for this. This would make a great servo mount for any custom project you might be building. I'm just going to cut the chassis along this rib here and around this rib here, and then just trim it. And then you can drill mount some mounting holes right here to mount this onto a chassis plate or or put it on on the axle of a crawler or whatever else you wanted to use. Thanks for watching. Until next time, thank you. Bye.